Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Fake Accents Unite, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. We're back. Applause from the audience. It comes, with the exception of, it must be said, unfortunately, that the Britisher this evening. I had thought that he would be here with us. I had thought that he was coming. Unfortunately, he informs me that that he hadn't received my message saying that I was back, and that he made other plans. So I presume that he is out with a lady friend this evening. I mean, that's the most charitable interpretation, is it not? But instead,
Has he at least shilled the stream? He needs to shill if he's not going to be here. Those are the rules.
Well, we'll see. I don't think he's shilling it, but he's on mobile. Instead, as you may have heard, we have a couple of guests which are going to come and fill the void this evening. Those are Scrump Monkey. Good evening, sir.
Yes, that's me. You heard rudely interrupting our intro there, as is tradition.
Absolutely. And we're also joined by Tailed Feature. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Feskerma and such.
Feskerma and such. The Scottisher who is struggling at the moment with his vocal cords, so bless
Oh
him.
no, it's my vocal cords are fine. It's the whole breathing bit that's causing me an issue.
Is it do you find yourself suddenly struck up with someone pierced you through the throat or something?
No, that would probably be preferable, to be honest.
But yes, here's our roundup for this evening. It is myself, Scrump, and Tailed. I hope that's good enough for everybody. Please do like the stream, share it. I appreciate we've been gone, and it's time to reveal why that is as well. Those of you who've been following on Twitter may have had an inkling. But yes, so 3 weeks ago, I would say, I moved. And I was intending to move to the place where I'm currently resident, but it didn't go ahead. So I was moved to a secondary location, a location with virtually no internet. I was able to appear, thankfully, on Unpopular Opinions last week, on the Tuesday when things had been sorted, but unfortunately all previous streams previous to that were just not possible. We're talking 1 megabit download to a quarter megabit upload here, and awful. It was very difficult. Couldn't even stream video above 360p. So
Had you moved to Scotland by any chance?
no, this is the central London. So
I was going to say, were you given like the accommodation equivalent of a courtesy car?
No. In fact, they acted like they were doing me a favour, even though I thought that the reason I was not moving into this place was because the previous tenant had COVID and was unable to leave the country because they had to quarantine. What happened in reality was that person's new place, he was waiting for internet there and didn't want to lose the internet here, so he lied to the company, said he had COVID, and then stayed an extra 3 weeks and caused a hell of a lot of hassle for me, and obviously losing out on providing the content to you good people. So real pain in the ass. Real pain in the ass, but we are here now. It is all solved, and I'm really glad to be able to bring the show back. I've missed you guys, and obviously my guests as well. I've missed having you around. But yeah, so how have things been? Oh, not just over the past week, but in terms of this bumper episode over the past month. How have you been getting on?
Very good question.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to take this one, Tail, first, or?
Well, personally, I've been having a jolly time. No, I've been having a pretty rough time of it lately. Although I was just told that I am no longer needed at the testing centre where I was working. So downside, no money. Upside, I don't have a really, really boring job that I hated anymore. So, positives and all that kind of thing. But that's really kind of all that's been happening to me. I haven't been engaged in a whole lot because of the work that I was doing. But yes, did miss the usual Monday night shenanigans here. Although I may not be on here all that often anymore. That will hopefully change now, because as I say, I am around a bit more. So whether that's good news or bad news for your audience, I don't know. I don't particularly care. I'll probably do what I used to do, which was just rock up unannounced, and you just let me in or not, depending on what your mood was.
You're perfectly welcome, Tailed. Scrump, I haven't had you on really. I'm looking back through the archive of Fake Accents Unite, and I'm pretty sure the last show you were on was episode 100, and we're on 129 now. So.
Yes.
What have you been up to? What's new in your space? Do you want to perhaps shill your own? I know you've got Starman and a Boomer.
Oh yeah, I've decided to make my own YouTube content because there's kind of a glut of a lot of the same other kinds of content, to be honest, out there. So I thought I've kind of moved through stuff that's more boring and in depth and history focused recently. So I don't know if you're looking for like lighter content. There'll be some of it. There is some of it. I do like a varied stuff these days, but my mainstream has been not bogged down, but immersed the past like 8 weeks in my series about democracy and why it doesn't particularly work very well. But if you fancy some esoteric political stuff for 3 hours, do tune in to our show on Thursday. I know it's not the best advert, but I'm not exactly making the most mainstream content these days, to be honest.
Who wants mainstream, to be honest?
Yeah. I've been retreating from the whole, pointing at a BuzzFeed article and going, wow, that's bad. Well, next thing. Which seems to be a lot of what the internet does these days.
So those of you who
I feel personally attacked.
So those of you who have taken a look at the stream title, Above and Beyond Fake Accents Unite, you'll notice there's a little extra tag on there which says plus giveaway. That's because, in order to say sorry effectively for delaying the show for 3 weeks, and to thank you really all for being here, I'm giving away a copy of Sid Meier's Civilization 6 Platinum Edition. So that's with a ton of the DLC included. I think it's about £155 value on Steam. So no console versions, I'm afraid, just PC. And all you'll need to do is like the stream and drop a comment, basically saying that you want it, and also, preferably something nice about the stream. That would be great. And one lucky person will be chosen at random, and I shall pop up a little video, or we shall choose that at the beginning of next week's stream, and then we shall reach out and see who shall have got it. So there we go. But yes, on to the rank punditry, as it were. We have it's the 21st of June, and that means that 2 events have been taking place currently. One is Pride Month. Pride Month is among us, although
didn't that used to be Pride Week?
It used to be Pride, like as in just the festival. Then it was Pride Week, so it was the festival and the week preceding, and then became Pride Month. So there we go.
Soon going to be Pride Infinity.
Pridefinity. Well, of course that would be the ideal, but of course then they wouldn't feel special anymore. It would be like
Petrol Pride.
This is like the only thing that I can think, because this is the way in which the people who run this, who are usually also running humanities departments, would do it, is we'll have Pride Month for a few years, and then we'll have Pride, the year of Pride, at some point in not on the centenary, but probably on the 50-year anniversary or something. And then at the centenary, we'll have the decade of Pride, right? The Pride decade, to celebrate, all that's been achieved, even if what's been achieved is the sexualization of children and the horrific nature of the whole thing. Not that I've got anything against gay people, it's just that Pride itself is alphabet territory and I hate it. Can't say I'm the biggest fan. Special Pride season, Mother's Pride. Goodness.
Well, the thing is,
Mother's Pride.
I've already seen people talking about summer being, or summer and spring being Pride season. I'm not even joking.
Oh.
Was there not something where Canada were thinking about doing that?
Yes.
It would be Canada, wouldn't it?
Of course, it's Canada. Canada's extremely cocked.
Mm. They have a lot to be prideful over, like
The trouble
seal.
is, is that like as more and more of these little indiscriminate sort of meaningless group categories try and aim for their own international day. This is one of those things the British would come down hard on. No one should have an international day for anything. We should never have any cultural or societal markers of anything. We should never try and focus specifically on a particular issue so that we don't forget it. I'm surprised that he's in favour of Remembrance Day, if I'm honest.
It's not a holiday, though, is it?
Well, no, none of it's a holiday, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, even Pride is not a holiday. People can take
It will be soon. Holiday.
Oh, Don't. Oh.
Yeah, it's more like holiday. Oh, no, it's
Homo day.
bad child feature.
So
bad.
wait, so-
I maybe take the opposite approach in that I just think a lot of this stuff needs to be frankly ignored, and like a lot of it's like made intentionally to wind you up. I think.
Well,
I think they're genuinely trying to annoy people with a lot of this stuff.
looking at it from the kind of meta perspective, it is impressive the amount that it's managed to saturate things. I would wait more companies put up the Pride flag for Pride Month than put on the poppy for Remembrance, for instance, in this country, despite the fact that it's... I don't know whether or not that's just because it's more of an American... it's
Yeah.
like it started over here and America picked it up and went massive with it, and then it's become much more of an American thing.
It's
I
quite
suppose.
literally like globo homo now.
Well, it's homo globo homo, but when I look at Pride over here, for instance, it's generally quite relegated to Brighton. Like, not every town or city has its own Pride parade. Even London, if I'm honest, doesn't really get involved with it that much. It's certainly not.
They do now. They do somewhat. I know Manchester does.
It's not really advertised. It's not like if you didn't know about it, if you weren't on the internet, you wouldn't notice it. Apart from a little bit of corporate advertising, and who really pays attention to that anyway, right? So
Yeah.
you don't really see. It's not like It's not like Mardi Gras. It's
Well, there are pride flags in commercial establishments, like large chain stores have like pride flags in them now.
Yeah, I know,
Like-
but my point is that the whole thing stems from the march. It stems from the festival, as it were, and
Yeah.
that festival still isn't, as far as I'm aware, particularly large. It's relegated to
No.
Brighton in the south.
Yeah, there is no real groundswell for it. You're right. This isn't something that's come bottom up. This isn't a natural cultural phenomenon. It is very much a lot of these, especially corporations, and it is corporations, have to show their allegiance to the hegemony opinion. They have to show that they are in lockstep with what the government and the establishment wants. That's what this really is. It's like next level virtue signaling. And they do it intentionally. They do it intentionally to create a united front like that. Because as we've seen with, COVID legislation and a whole bunch of other stuff, like the businesses that are open are basically allowed to be open in many countries by the government. It's never been as controlled really, apart from in wartime as it is now. So I think it's really just a symptom partially of the climate of fear that many of these corporations live in. Oh, what they do is they'll let people in their PR department who tend to be more humanities trained, quote unquote, and a bit younger, and they tend to let them run roughshod over their social media and advertising and let them present this friendly face when internally they don't believe any of it. It really is just there to signal that they don't want to be, targeted by these people because it's easier, because, the leftist activists make themselves scarier. So that's the way they bend. It's the way the most pressure is.
Here's the other interesting thing, because it used to be, as you say, HR and that sort of thing. They've created their own office now, which is, we see diversity and inclusion officers and stuff like that, which has basically taken... You cannot... Whereas people in HR might have criticised the use of company resources for pandering, there's now the Office of Pandering, right? So it's in their job description to pander, and therefore you can't criticise them for doing their job, as it were. And you've got the they've built their own industry for it. Anyone who is currently thinking, oh, these people, they do their humanities subjects, there's no work for them, it's wrong. There are, at the moment, I think, there was a quick test, there was something like 63,400 diversity and inclusion positions across the country, in just the UK. So this is a budding industry which is really taken off, and I don't see it going anywhere. In terms of looking at it for the meta perspective on it, I look at it and I go, what can we take from this? What can we learn from this? The first is they have the positive vision sold, right? For all of their dilettantes, all of their adherents are utterly obsessed with this idea of diversity. First off, diversity good. That was the first thing. You take inclusion, which is generally considered to be a good, right, a moral good, to include people so that more people have access to resources. It's very easy to sell that morally. Diversity is also fairly easy once you blur the lines between neurodiversity and how should I put it? Because it's not just ethnicity; it's everything. So it's like between arbitrary categories and neurodiversity, because neurodiversity matters and arbitrary categories don't.
Diverse has become a descriptor in of itself. People can be diverse in their sense without being different. I remember, HuffPost talking about their diverse office, and it's all 30-year-old white women who smell like cat piss. What it is that the diverse group is the in-group, and the anti-diverse group is the out-group. And that's how it functions.
Well, the thing is, how can a person be diverse?
It really is, it's just doublespeak.
Well, a person
really doesn't have a lot to do with what they talk about. It doesn't even have a lot to do with a lot of their talking points.
A person can hold a diverse set of views. They usually do. They usually have a diverse set of skills, but they don't. They're not diverse in and of themselves, just as they are.
No, and that's not the way that they mean diverse.
Yeah, diverse is just, again, it's an in-group descriptor. If you use this language, you are part of the in-group. If you are anti this kind of language, you're part of the out-group. And that is how they use these diversity officers. They're very useful at getting rid of people that they don't like, because everyone is technically in violation of all of these diversity rules at some point.
You'll notice, they're never going to be in the point where, if you're a diversity and inclusion officer, say, I know, Tailed, you fit the mold of a diversity and inclusion officer so well. Tailed Features is sitting there in his diversity and inclusion office, and he's going, how can I get more diverse people in? And he's in a company which is obviously 99% white Scottish, right? But he gets there eventually. He creates this diverse environment of different peoples, and eventually it's as brown and as gay as the law dictates. But then, like, how do we get this? It's like, are they gay enough? Or they will always invent new categories. You're never going to get a diversity and inclusion officer. This is the one thing to look out for with people. It's like an officer is someone who will never vote themselves out of a job. It's the same way that if you want to find racism, you will always find it, that sort of thing. Because if you're a professor of race studies, you're never going to say it's getting better.
A diversion and inclusivity officer is never going to go, well, my work here is done.
Oh, I've done a fantastic job. This place is now as inclusive as it could possibly be. Damn, I'm good.
They'll just keep splitting the atom, and blowing everything up, basically. I mean, that was like when I went to that hate crime consultation thing a couple of years ago. There was me and there was a couple other people that were just members of the public, but everybody else was either part of an organization or an activist or whatever, and most of them were just justifying their own jobs. They're like, I'm an equalities officer for the local council and all that kind of thing.
Well,
so I was like, no wonder you're here. It's because you're trying to justify your job.
You'll find most of them, though, are either government employees or are directly or indirectly employed or were pressured, the company they work for is pressured into doing so by an NGO, which in turn gets most of its money from the government. So it's very easy to see a lot of these diversity and inclusion officers as essentially government agents. They're snoops. They're like Stasi members. And a lot of that stuff, like the COVID stuff, the gay stuff, the trans stuff, even some of the international trade stuff and Brexit stuff is all there to weed out people who aren't like in with the program, who aren't thinking right. There's all these different angles to it, but it doesn't matter whether it's LGBT or COVID or whatever it is. It is a system of weeding out people who are not agreeable to the current process.
Well, yes, I mean we know all this already. The interesting thing is to take the lessons learned, right? So they have the positive vision, as I mentioned before. So they've got this idea. The dilettantes don't need to know any details whatsoever. All they need to know is that it's couched in a nice, cushy language. Diversity, inclusion sounds wonderful on the face of it. I mean, so one of the things, I saw a meme, which was quite funny the other day. Someone is on Omegle, right, doing one of these silly Omegle random things, comes across a woman, and he goes, what do you make of the fact that homosexuals make up 2% of the population, and yet 45% of child abuse or something like that, right? I have no idea if this statistic is entirely accurate, but the response to that was not calling it out, wasn't counterfacts, it wasn't anything like that. It was a slogan, it was rhetoric, it was love is love, I think was the response. Because most midwit, first off, well done for being pro-paedophilia, random person.
Yeah, that's very loaded there.
But the second thing is, like, that's what most people are like. Like, they don't know anything beyond the rhetoric, and that sounds, good. If you say, you should have the right to love who you want because love is love, then most people will say, well, that's good enough for me. Love is love. They never have to deal with the fringe cases. They never have to deal with anything mildly controversial. And if anyone brings up something controversial, they might be perturbed, but they retreat into the rhetoric and the emphasis frame. And
you brought up the M word there, the midwits.
Yeah, midwits. These are primarily middle class, relatively well educated people. This is not. These are not. Again, I don't want to embody, because I don't actually believe the meme is totally accurate. With the bell curve, with the people at the bottom going, don't know why, I just don't like gays, and then the people in the middle going love is love, and then the people at the top of the IQ going talking about child abuse stats. Right? I don't really buy into that too much, but there is some element, a grain of truth, as it were, which is why it's gained traction.
The problem with the midwits is that they believe that what they say is actually what they believe, and what they say changes moment to moment. It seems to be. I
don't even think it changes that much, mate. I think it's that they are very much open to just taking on more and more messages, and they'll also it doesn't matter if the messages are contradictory, and it doesn't matter because most of the time these are just messages, right? These are opinions on the behaviours of other people, primarily, and so their own hypocrisy matters naught because of that.
They don't have, well, I think what you can characterise with it is they don't have an internally consistent worldview, and they also aren't just willing to trust their own reactions and, the content of their own mind and their own judgments. That's where there's the whole "have you got a study to prove this" thing. You're assuming midwit behaviour. You're
assuming that they've considered their own reactions at all. It's not that they don't trust them. It's not even that they don't. It's not even that they have a reaction. I mean, I've been these people, right? So, a few years and years and years ago, and you don't think of it. You very much take the appeal to authority. Whoever has given you the message, if it was someone, usually an educator, someone who's above you in some way, or in the government, and then if you don't trust the government if an activist has told you something different, right?
Yeah. Well, there's many layers of midwittery. That's one of them. But there's people who are maybe on more the 110, 120 end of it, who do think they know what they're talking about, but they will just, again, defer to authority in the form of, a government-approved study. And it really ends up in the same way, which
I
is,
always find,
well, person in authority says this, so, I say this.
I always find that even funnier, because they'd be the first people to point out that a lot of studies are made invalid if they're in their own mind, if they are funded by, say, oil and gas companies with regards to climate change, right? They'll immediately point out that there's a bias, but then they assume that educational institutions have no bias whatsoever, which is even more curious. And then they've got their own think tanks which they trust, and then they've got the government approved stuff which they also trust. So, which is again flips on a coin, because they don't trust the Tories, but they'll trust this research which comes out the Tories as long as it's favourable to their perspective. Horrific.
Yeah, that's something that I never ever understood. Was, oh my God, Tories are Nazis. Oh my God, Republicans are Nazis. Hey, government, come and do all this stuff for us.
Yes, that's
come and, please remove more of our freedoms. I did not understand that at all.
Please expand. No. If you, like the Americans, like, please Biden, take our guns. It's like, you wanted Trump to take your guns when you were afraid of Trump, that you thought he was a literal fascist dictator. What are you doing?
Please take our guns and drop them off in Palestine.
We're not touching the Israel-Palestine conflict this evening. I'm just going to put that out there.
I don't know anything about it. I just like annoying people.
No, exactly.
Getting back on the pride thing, though, I think a lot of that is like, it's just meant to show like how much these people have won. It's just it's like a victory dance. It is like ritual humiliation at this point. Because the point of propaganda isn't to persuade people. The point of propaganda is really to humiliate them and try to make them repeat what they know is a lie. That's like the most powerful tool that they have, and one of the things the Soviet Union did is they would make people repeat things they knew was a lie, just as a display of power over them.
It's hard to tell how many people know what is a lie and what isn't. A case in point, I will take my own parents, who, bless them, I love them very much, and let's take the COVID vaccine, and they just don't comprehend what the vaccine is, what it does, and also what we know it does. That is, like, I'm not talking about conspiracies here, who it's for, or who it should be for, rather, and how it helps, right? So I said I'm not getting the vaccine. I'm going to leave it a couple of years to see what the midterm, long-term effects are, etc.
I'm going to wait for the midterms.
I just it just makes sense to me. Like, I'm going to wait until the trials have concluded, as it were.
Yeah, you're going to let the guinea pigs be the guinea pigs,
right? And I can understand if you're a vulnerable person, and you're, as in, genuinely vulnerable to this thing, as my parents are, getting that vaccine, because for you the relative risk is enough from this disease that you want to get that. That's fine. That's your choice. The vaccine lowers your symptoms. We know this, if you get any, and it also, but it doesn't prevent transmission of any kind, and it doesn't stop you catching it. So when my dad who is fully vaccinated, is saying, like, I just don't get why you're not getting the vaccine, and I'm having to explain over and over again that, and he's like, what happens if you give it to us? And I'm like, you'll get it regardless. It doesn't matter if I've had the vaccine or not. There are a lot of people out there. My parents are not stupid people, by the way, but it's just the case that most people don't commit any real thought to it. They've not done an enormous amount of research on it. They aren't particularly well versed in what the different types of vaccine do, and as well, or the action of them, and they just don't have time. A lot of people, especially if they're working, They rely on podcasts like this to inform them of what's
I
going
think
on.
a lot of people are just so beaten down as well that the last year has been like very deliberate psychological warfare on them. That they are, they just want it to end, and they're willing to do anything to make it end. And there's very deliberate like hat tip messaging. There seems to be like preparing people to turn on each other in a very ugly way. There's a lot of messaging out there that implies that people who do not want to get vaccinated are your enemy, and they are the people who are stopping you from getting back to your normal lives. That is a lot of the narrative that's happening now, and that is incredibly dangerous.
It's also
creating
incredibly
like a medical.
It's also incredibly stupid because the
Yes.
people who are refusing the vaccine at this point are the non-vulnerable population. They're talking about, young people seem to be spreading the virus, blah, blah, blah. There are fewer people in hospital with COVID than we have hospitals. So it's really, what's the point? People are still scared by this idea of cases. By this idea of infections, I should say, because they call them cases, but they aren't actual cases. They're scared by this idea of infections, and given how much of the population has been vaccinated, the vulnerable part certainly, and given the fact that they have tested the vaccine that's been primarily given, the Oxford AstraZeneca one, and it's remarkably effective against whatever the new mutation is. Who cares, right? And the irritating thing is I see it now in my friends who are not necessarily politically engaged, but who are who are intelligent people who have, just because it's been going on for a year and a half, taken on the knowledge. I would be happy if I never hear the phrase social distancing ever again in my life. But even my friends who are deeply skeptical of the vaccine and so on, who said that they're not going to take it unless they absolutely have to for travel, for instance, these are just normies, and they're just sitting there and they're going, nobody's social distancing in this pub, and I'm like, the situation, the facts. Why would they? Who cares? What's the point? And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Isn't that a good time to say that I've had both my jabs?
Yeah, mate. Well, I'm sure you had to for work, right?
I didn't actually, but I got bumped up the list, and I did think, well, I am a lot more likely to get it, and I would rather, mitigate any effects that actually catching it would have. So.
Yeah.
And also, I'm Scottish, free drugs,
Yeah.
I'm not going to turn them down.
The people who I'm most concerned about with the whole vaccination thing is young women primarily, given that there appears to be a low but real possibility of fertility issues, and we don't know about the sort of, as I say, mid to long term fertility issues with that. If it reduces your fertility period by 3 or 4 years even, that's going to make life very, very difficult for anyone who wants to have families in their 30s, for instance. We don't know about any effects for that with men, but we do know that the protein spikes in and of themselves are quite damaging. So it's a relative risk. It's up to you. I don't care if you've taken it. I don't mind. I think vaccines as a whole are a good measure, but I just don't think this has been tested enough for me to feel comfortable doing it, especially as I'm not vulnerable to the disease, right?
I don't even make medical arguments about it anymore. It's just the fact that they are creating a situation in which you have to undergo a procedure to, essentially have normal rights in society. The private companies are now saying that they won't employ people unless they're vaccinated.
Yes.
Sorry.
This is the other thing, is in public, it is illegal, for instance, for a business to ask a consumer for their medical history. The same is not necessarily true, as I understand it, for people who have, who want to work for a company. But at the same time, I can see many lawsuits going forward.
This is a mass violation of the Disabilities Act, and it really is. And the thing is, some people know it and some people don't. You'll get people in establishments who are like, you have to provide your medical exemption card. And I'm
Fuck
like,
off.
no, I don't. Read the Disability Act. I'd be very careful because this, we are technically in violation of it. And there's a lot of advice online telling stores and employers and, bars and restaurants that if they refuse someone's service because of their vaccination status or because of their, exemption status, that is technically against the law. And they're going to end up in hot water at some points because of that. There's a lot of stuff as well with the COVID fines where those did not hold up in court because of some of the technicalities of law and some of the laziness of the police filling them out, especially. It's very tenuous what's happening. It's really a lot of it is ruled by decree. None of this gels with the law of the land, and a lot of the emergency COVID legislation does not supersede the existing law, and it's incredibly strange that this is being allowed to happen. I guess all the courts are closed in a lot of areas still, but it's very much a case of that this is just, again, it's ruled by decree. Technically, everyone who says that they can't be refused service is right. But that doesn't matter because people can just arbitrarily decide that they don't like you and they don't like you telling them what the law is. So you can just leave. But that doesn't change what the law actually is. And I'd be very interested to see a lot of this be tested in court because it would be very difficult for them on the merit of British law to uphold any of this.
I just... Yeah, I'm curious to see whether or not laws are rushed through, essentially, to defend especially large businesses who are going to come under fire because of this. But we've yet to see it, so I won't speculate too much on that, but you're absolutely right there, Scrump. The Disabilities Act, if that gets scrapped as well, that's going to be interesting as well. I have a friend who's a disabilities campaigner who believes that a genocide of the disabled is coming. And wouldn't it be funny if, I mean, not really, but wouldn't it be interesting if this was the catalyst which caused a whole load of other protections to be revoked just because the hatred of the unvaccinated must continue unabated, right?
What we're seeing here, though, is like an emergence of like mass consciousness. The law itself, and even the enforcement of the law, sometimes just doesn't matter. It matters what people believe, and it matters, who exercises power.
The law. I mean, well, there's a huge debate at the moment ongoing about. I mean, that has been ongoing for years about the relationship between culture, power, and politics, right? But basically the excuse me, the current working understanding, as I would put it, is culture is downstream from politics, and politics is downstream from power. And what power wants to do to their culture will happen because laws do influence culture over time. But it is also true that culture has its own sort of backlash. I mean, let's take Dubai for instance. I knew someone who lived in Dubai, and because they were corrupt. They said, you could drink essentially in Dubai as long as you didn't have a particularly zealous policeman, and even if you got caught, they would understand that it's just something that happens. Nobody wants, partly because the fines and the punishments are also so severe. Nobody really wants to do it, and they'd rather take a bribe than bring you in and have your hand chopped off or whatever. So it depends on how it's enforced, it depends on who's enforcing it, it depends on the cultural attitude towards a particular law as to whether or not it's enforced in an area at all. I mean, even closer to home, if you look at the war on drugs, which Peter Hitchens has continuously pointed out has never existed in this country, really. We started arresting people for possession, and now we don't even do that, really. So it's... And there's a...
What they could do, that's the thing, is what people don't realize is that at any moment they could start arbitrarily arresting people for that again. It depends what their priorities are. If the top of the power structure really wants to do something and is persistent about doing it for a long period of time, there's very little people can do without, an actual revolution. It's kind of depressing once you study British history that, especially once something passes out of living memory, the definition of it becomes whatever the elites at the time want it to be. If people don't remember an event, or people don't remember a time before an event, one of the examples I've been given, it's actually pretty good, is the fact that sometimes you'll see a movie that's set in like the 90s,
Right.
and there'll be these people going through this ridiculous airport security. There'll be the TSA there. That didn't happen in the 90s. That only really changed after 2001. Airports were still responsible for their own community. But because that's so pervasive now, you get films that are set in a time period without the TSA that include them. And depressingly, I think if this continues for the next 20 years, there's all this biological security. You'll have films that set themselves in, the mid-2000s that will have people wearing masks. And that won't be questioned because it's just so normal for people.
Speaking of the masks issue, there are some surreal stories coming out, especially now the pro-maskers who are like, oh, I didn't catch the flu or a cold this year, therefore I'm just going to wear my mask 100% of the time when I'm outdoors. It's just utterly surreal. If you want to do it, mate, you do it, but you're effectively a conspiracy theorist because it's very, very rare that you catch these things outdoors anyway.
Well, those people who've isolated too much and worn the mask too much are now immunosuppressed. They are in incredible danger of having an extremely severe reaction to the normal flu and dying.
Yeah, that's the other thing. For the same reason that people say don't coat your entire kitchens in Dettol, right? Don't isolate your children in a hermetically sealed bubble, because kids need to be exposed to things in order to get better from them. We just become a weaker and weaker society.
Imagine the explosion of asthma and autoimmune diseases that children are going to have who were raised in lockdown. It's going to be unmanageable.
People talk about why are this is going to seem like a very strange segue, but why are sub-Saharan Africans much better at sport than white Europeans, right? And the answer is natural selection. Essentially, they don't have all of the creature comforts. They don't have the welfare state that we've had. If you are not fit and able, you're much more likely to die. And this has meant that they have continued to, and they also don't select necessarily for intelligence in the same way. So the physical prowess becomes more dominant, and therefore, again, becomes more of a
That's a kind of spicy subject there. That it's yes. Why would someone from a pre-agricultural culture that that didn't have farming within the last 300 years? Why do they have better physical fitness over long distances? I wonder.
Chat's telling me not at swimming.
Oh.
But no.
There's been some news articles about that I thought were parody, and they weren't, about upping the amount of elite grade black swimmers, and I just could not stop laughing because it's like a meme.
Oh dear. But yeah, no, and I'm not pushing a race realist argument. I'm just saying that the places where we haven't had effectively the ability to protect and look after the least productive, the least physically able, the disabled, and the chronically ill in society, at the same time as we have lucratively rewarded people who work in office environments who don't necessarily have to do much physically, they don't have to travel long distances. Lo and behold, those places have people who are more capable of doing that because those are the traits which get selected for.
It's like the Dave Chappelle sketch with the black guy who thinks he's a white guy and is part of the KKK.
I don't know this.
I mean, they're great sketches. He does the blind black guy who thinks he's a white guy, and all of his white supremacist friends are too nice to tell him that. They're too nice to tell him he's black, and that's the whole sketch.
That's hilarious.
He's like, I'm black? Cancel the swimming lessons! Sorry, just instantly reminded of that. Dave Chappelle used to be, well, he still is quite funny, but he used to be very, very funny. Like Chris Rock used to be a bit more spicy.
Let's see here. This seems like a good time for a quick break, as it were, from the rank punditry. So let's go and has sent us in 50 kroner. Thank you very much, Sitsko, who says, "You are 1,209,688 seconds late. I'm hardly surprised that you're late, but at this count, the count is in several millions, and I need to tally it in full." Good God, Sitsko.
He's counted every second.
I wonder if you need to produce two tallies, one for deliberate lateness and one for indirect lateness, and compare the two and see where it's at. So there we are. The welfare state has only been going for 60 years or so. How has that got anything to do with genes now? Oh, but the welfare state, as I'm decreeing it, is not quite there. I said we selected for intelligence in Europe, and we've had several empires and several states of being. What the strategy for survival in Europe has been very, very different to the strategy for survival in, say, sub-Saharan Africa, and people have been able to get very wealthy, and our aristocracies have been able to get to maintain themselves and become very wealthy without having to depend on physical traits much more than in Africa. That's what I'm getting at there. We have Leonardo da Vinci,
yeah.
Africa does not, right? And these are people who are not the most physically able.
I'm being informed the sketch was a quite famous one. Clayton Bigsby, that's it, the Chappelle one. So I'm getting spammed with that now.
Okay. I'm being told, please stop this. Okay, right. We won't talk about this anyway. Okay.
You're going to get in trouble.
I'm going to get in trouble. But yes, so jumping back to Covidius Maximus.
Well, Brescia isn't here. You're busting out the Latin. My God.
Yeah, I know. Well, we got to find some way to remind ourselves of him. Apparently, Boris has promised us it's definitely looking good. This time he really means it. He's not actually an evil dictator with no spine and a bit of a coward. We're definitely going to open up on the 19th of July, just like we were definitely going to open up on the 21st of June. So how are we all feeling? How many extensions are we predicting amongst ourselves?
It's very Groundhog Day. So Boris sees his own shadow. We get 3 more months of lockdown. That's what it is.
I don't know if it will be 3 months. If we discover the Gamma variant, perhaps.
They've already done that. The Kent variant. We're cancelling Christmas, and the Indian / they call it the Delta variant now because people have started saying, well, why were people still traveling from India? Which is a moot point anyway because it's haggling over the conditions of your imprisonment. But that's a separate topic. I think there's probably going to be a few weeks of opening up. And then they're going to say, oh, it's autumn, it's lockdown time again. There's already news stories I've seen softening people up for that. There's already Cobra members talking about the fact that, yes, we will have to wear masks this winter. And yes, there will have to be another lockdown this winter.
I just hate the idea that lockdowns become normalised. And I don't know how we're going to stop it. But then at the same time, if you know what you're doing, it is easy to avoid them. Your own behaviour doesn't necessarily have to change all that much, as long as you choose the right times to go out and with the right people and doing the right activities. The biggest issue for me is the utter destruction of small business, and also social activities where you might meet new people, right? So you can maintain your existing friendships, relationships, that sort of thing. I mean, most people, as long as you're not having a massive or a particularly noisy house party, you can get away with seeing friends and that sort of thing. Although I agree, you shouldn't have to live in fear of your neighbour dobbing you into the police about the fact that you decided to have a glass of wine and dinner with your mates. But a pint and some chips with your mates. But there are ways around it, and it depends who you're living with, and a lot of people are reasonable for these sorts of things. Or you could do just what I'm doing, which is going out to a national park to meet friends, for instance, because who gets to catch you because they're not running the drones after that debacle earlier in the year where they sent drones out and told people to go home. It's like, we're miles away from the nearest people. This is not a risk factor.
Well, essentially, in many ways, the damage has already been done because they've already put through a whole bunch of new policing laws, which make the idea of you having rights moot anyway, because anyone at any time can decide as a state actor. I don't know if you heard about the whole human intelligence sources bill thing.
Yeah.
But
for the sake of the audience, explain it.
Oh, I think it's the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Bill. Basically says that anyone in the course of an investigation can commit any crime, up to and including murder, if it means that they don't have to blow their cover or it's in aid of the investigation, and that includes any state actor, anyone who can technically be regarded as a state employee. So that's if you have someone who's like a member of the National Park Service, or our equivalent of over here. And they decide that you've littered somewhere, they could technically defend murdering, your friend as, oh, I was just, I did it in the course of my undercover investigation. And the Human Rights Commission in the UK described it as a charter of state-sponsored rape and murder. They actually said that. They said it was incredibly terrible in its current form, but ended up just going through because apparently nobody keeps an eye on legislation during a lockdown. So,
well, they haven't kept their eye on legislation for the past 25 years, if I'm honest. So, it's difficult.
There's also been the policing bill as well, which there was all those protests about in the left really are the fucking worst. Because they just end up creating excuses. They end up the dialectic becomes you either support them or the police, when really you don't want to be supporting either at the moment.
Yes. I'm looking at this. We started out 3 weeks to flatten the curve. It's now been a year and a half to flatten the curve. Could it end up being 3 years to flatten the curve? That would be the ultimate meme, wouldn't it? But I look at it and I go, I think it's much more likely that the lockdowns become a normalised pattern of behaviour, especially around winter. But I don't know what to do about. See, the trouble is, I look at that and I go, if that happens, that we don't need accelerationism because society will collapse anyway, or we head straight to corporatism, right? Like full end state capitalism, corporate overlords and that sort of thing, because it becomes completely, unless you're in the digital space, completely unviable to run a small business. You cannot do it.
Yeah, there's the eco stuff as well, which is going to add a massive regulatory burden to doing businesses. Like, from my position with a lot of the stuff, it looks like we're all just going to be like Khmer Rouge-style dirt farmers by the end of all this, because we can't produce carbon or else the world's going to burn. That's the rhetoric, really. That we need lockdowns, we need complete social control, you can't have a car, you can't fly anywhere, and you must stay at home in your little pod and eat bugs, otherwise the world's going to end.
Well, the big thing with the car industry as well at the moment is committing to heavy electric vehicles only by 2030 is the sort of average for many countries, and you see people celebrating this as if electric cars are in any way in a position where they are able to replace current vehicles. They're much heavier, they're much more wasteful, they have a huge issue with their shelf life. The vehicles don't last that long.
They're also too expensive for the average consumer as well.
Well, no. Well, we'll assume that they get cheaper if it's the only vehicle you could possibly own. But also, so I'm hoping that they keep hybrids at least as purchasable, because it's the only way this is going to work. Because of course, anyone who's got a fuel-based vehicle is going to run into the issue that prices are going to go through the roof for their fuel. And then you've also got the issue that, or maybe they'll just make it illegal unless you have a long-distance vehicle or something. But the issue as well is that when the batteries are dead, they can't be reused, they can't be recycled, they produce more waste than nuclear. Our grid is also currently in its existing state incapable of supporting the charging of an entire nation of electric cars overnight. So, and
They're not going to let reality stop them, though.
well, the trouble is that we're not France, right? In the sense that France at least had the Gilets jaunes movement, which caused the delay of that that fuel bill passing, if I recall correctly. So over here, we'll just sort of take it, but we're talking about the fact that we're reaching a utopian level of thinking, which has gone beyond, well, what have we been able to achieve within the current system, to what can we build that will go beyond the current system. And what they're going to try and build is something which is just completely untenable, or at least massively hypocritical, incredibly damaging to the environment when they're claiming they're trying to save it.
I don't think it's just hypocritical. I think it's very fully intentional and being very done with that in mind. They know that this isn't workable, and coupled with the lockdowns and trying to keep people within their specific areas, it's going to be full Soviet cars for the people, comrade spec.
Mate,
it's going to be, in order to run a vehicle, you're going to have to know someone or have a government job.
I know these people, and they, as in the people who are supporting this, and they have no idea. They haven't done their research. But I see what you're saying, like going onto the waiting list to get a car, right? That's where we're heading right now. And I was saying,
I have an 18-year-old car, and I keep putting money into it because I refuse to get anything newer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going around, polluting up the environment. I don't care.
Well, it's when your car, even if it does last another 10 years, just the price of fuel becomes so expensive that you can't even afford to run it, mate. That's the issue.
I'll just make it coal powered instead. I'll put a steam engine.
You'll put a steamer,
it.
like a little steamer. Like,
Yeah.
I wish someone would draw you in your little steam engine tugboat kind of thing, but on the road.
I'll have to I'll try and Photoshop that or something.
And I could use that as a thumbnail for my next stream.
I'll make you and your little steam car.
Regional variations chugging its way down the road, the regional mobile.
Regional vehicle. I've killed the conversation. That's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. British Knight says humans have been getting weaker but smarter for 200,000 years. This is just another expression of this, referring to my previous statement. Yeah, man. I mean, 200,000 years is probably a little bit optimistic there. People forget that the human race is remarkably young, and even written history here is 12,000 years ish. So, yeah, maybe more like 20,000 rather than 200,000. So there's that. But thanks for the super chat, appreciate it. Yes. What else has been going on? Yes, I forgot to mention with the Pride thing. There was that tweet, the marvelous tweet. I'm gonna put it up because it was hilarious. Where's this now?
Could be anything. I'm trying to figure out what this is now. My brain's going to full the equations on screen meme.
No. So this was the official @Pride Twitter account.
Oh, that one.
Putting out the spiciest possible image.
I saw that about 5 times and I thought that was fake until I eventually got sent an archive of it. I just couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, it was truly. Someone had to be self-aware. They had to be self-aware. There is no way the person who crafted and tweeted this majestic image was not aware. The fact that there's a building on there, and
it's a fucking building.
It's a bloody building. You had a good retweet on this one, didn't you, Tailed? If he's not disappeared,
is he dead?
He might have. He's muted.
So. Oh, sorry. No, I didn't realize I'd muted myself. No, I posted a rather spicy meme. So
indeed,
I do have it to hand, or nearly to hand anyway. I know what folder it's in, so I can share it if you want to. It's not too spicy for your stream.
No,
if you want it.
It's it is a case of that is very funny. but it's also kind of, you're right. Someone sit there must have like someone who's like a shitlord in it, who's like sabotaging it for the inside with these subtly bad ideas. But I don't know. Maybe I'm too optimistic there. Meeting has been moved to rooftop. Yes.
Meeting has been moved to rooftop. I look at this. There were so many amazing edits of this. There was also like someone. Obviously, you've got the person at the top there pushing, and they turned the flag, which was going down, into a person with a terrified expression on their face. That was quite funny. They unfortunately, as they do, this was removed, and unfortunately, we lost a load of golden replies. But I just look at this and I go, the person who tweeted this must have known. There's no way. You know, if you're engaged in any way in the pride, in the gay community or anything like that, you must know about the places where you're illegal, right? And we're not talking about some midwit who's just like, oh, pride, so good. We're talking about someone who's an activist, actively engaged.
Well, I suppose the only other thing it could have been would have been throwing it out of a helicopter.
Yeah, I saw that edit actually.
Oh, okay. I thought I was being original, but obviously not.
And I'm pretty sure I saw that as an edit.
Wouldn't surprise me really, but yeah, it'd be the same thing. You know, if they'd tweeted that, you know, if the actual Pride account had tweeted, you know, it'd been thrown out of a helicopter, you'd be like, yeah, you know.
I don't know. The entire Pride show is such a sideshow. The entire Pride thing, it just, I think a lot of people get like, there's a lot of like rainbow shilling and a lot of anger at the rainbow shilling, but not a lot really gets accomplished by being angry at the rainbow. I just feel like it's being deliberately distracted sometimes.
It's also become too broad, right? Like they've made it into the equivalent of a national holiday, without actually having to do that. To the point where it's more recognisable to a lot of people than even Remembrance, and that's the thing I will always come back to, because that's, apart from Christmas, really that's the big, like, we have Christmas, Easter, Remembrance, and now Pride, right? These are the things people remember go on in the year as sort of national events. There's not really anything else. Although America has invented its own, hasn't it, recently? This Juneteenth thing.
The whole Juneteenth thing.
First off, I hate the name.
It does sound like something a child would come up with, or it's the sort of.
When are we going to grandparents? Oh, on Juneteenth. No, on the 10th. On the 10th.
Or if he's, well, I kind of meant, you know, or it's the sort of answer you would give your child and say, when are we going to such and such, and you go, oh, the 32nd of, you know, Hextober or something like that. You just make something up because you're like, I don't know, or we're not going. You know, you just make something up to annoy your kids. That's kind of what it sounds like. Or when you say, oh, this happened years ago in 19 Canteen, you know, that kind of thing. It's just a bit stupid. It's not a proper name for a holiday, is it? Come on, Americans.
Well, the thing is, it's not even on the 13th. Like, and it makes sense if it was like the 1st in the, but it's not. It's the 19th. So it just, Juneteenth. It's like, okay, it could be any, you know, of the teens in June. It's not even specific enough. And it doesn't even help you remember it. It's just shit.
I just hate it. It makes me think of teeth, and I hate Juneteenth, and I just don't.
Or
no. That's a horrific. Oh, no. It's not even that graphic a film. It's just a horrific
It is
premise.
almost like baby talk, though. You are right.
Yeah. Well, these people, they love it. They love being infantilized. But it's now a national holiday, right? Like an official national holiday, effectively. It's the date of the last freeing of the slaves. Is that right? Like when the last slaves were officially set free in America. That I think is the premise. Apparently, there's been a shooting at some Juneteenth celebrations.
Very diverse
Did
shooting.
did they shoot a slave owner?
I have no idea.
The descendant of a slave owner, or the descendant of someone who knew a
Well,
slave owner?
it's like, if you've heard of the 1619 project, it's like the cultural equivalent of that. It's the redefinition of American history to purely be about slavery and apologizing for it. And that, this idea that the US was actually founded in 1619 because that's when the first slaves were brought over, and it is this ultra revisionist version of, like, again, a lot of the Pride stuff and a lot of the the Black Lives Matter stuff is, it's not even a soft cultural revolution anymore. It is just like a cultural revolution that they are pulling on people, and they are doing it partially under the auspices of the COVID stuff, and because, like, what are people going to do about it? Basically, it's really what this all boils down to. It's like, well, we can do this, and what are you going to do about it?
So
Oh
this,
God, I didn't.
so this is an image which has been put up on Twitter, saying "Black queer woman winning on Juneteenth. Love to see it." They've literally pissed themselves, or someone's poured a heart-shaped piss on them. Like, what? Why? Why? Black, yeah, 20. They got this Juneteenth talking about black socialists in America, and then of course this whole idea of like equity and justice and stuff like that, right? It's like, oh, know that work to end racist practices and injustice continues, and then of course the really stupid meme, which is like the only successful meme I'm aware that the left have ever produced, which is also just utterly inaccurate in every way, as we all know. Equality and equity are not this, and neither is justice. If it was justice, they'd have bought a ticket. But it's like, for God's sake,
Yeah,
reality.
I might sound a bit different.
I
My
like.
Windows just decided to update on me, so I'm now on my phone for a second while it does
Okay,
that.
good. I like that in the left hand panel here, actually, where they say reality, they've got like the Indian guy much higher than the other two brown people, because that's what it actually is. One gets more than is needed. Again, who determines what's needed? Like, to each what they are able to get, for fuck's sake. Juneteenth is a celebration of American greatness, apparently. I don't know about that.
I thought that was what the 4th of July was.
Yeah, exactly. Independence from the British, and then you've got like independence from the legacy of slavery. Oh wait, they keep bringing up the legacy of slavery. But yes, people generally enjoying another national holiday. But I just, and again, it's
Right, just get bank holidays, scrubs.
I just hate it. I just hate it. Like, a national holiday, really? A national holiday?
Like I said, it is about the redefinition of the founding principles and, the founding events of America.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the thing that it's being celebrated here as well. If people don't know, it's not a national holiday here, obviously, but people are celebrating it here, and it's infuriating.
Well, they just follow on from whatever the American activists do. They're very, pretty oblivious in that way.
Well, yeah, because they probably think it's really bad that we don't have anything commemorating the fact that we abolished slavery before anyone else and spent a huge amount of money on trying to enforce it.
They've taken that away from us, you see, because Haiti did it first. Although, the point is that not that we abolished slavery, it's that for a time we abolished the slave trade. This is a very different thing. There was never slavery to abolish in this country, legally. But, indentured servants and serfdom and all that stuff and all these different allegories that you might have, none of it had a racial characteristic, and also it was a different thing. I mean, subtly distinct, but distinct. And then you've got, on the other hand, you've got us abolishing the slave trade, which is what they try and obfuscate, Mott and Bailey. The British were the first to abolish slavery, and then they retreat. They go, oh no, it was Haiti, and you just go, no, it wasn't. Haiti may have abolished slavery. Lots of different nations have abolished slavery within their own borders over the years, but we were the first to abolish international, global slave trade as much as we physically could at the expense of many lives. There we go.
Yes, indeed. But of course, if we did celebrate that, then that would undermine their position about how we're still a racist country and everything. So they're probably not going to bring that up.
Trollop7 says there were plenty of slaves here, Mark. Many of them were white. Yes, but not legally. Not legally. This is the point. It was illegal. It may have been tolerated, but it was never legal. Sorry, what were you saying, Scrump?
Oh, I was just going to say, their version of history, like, it doesn't have to be logically consistent. It just has to, instill the message they want it to instill. They aren't really trying to create a world history that hangs together. They're just trying to get forward an agenda, and that's all it's for.
No, of course. They're not interested in the truth, and we should never make the mistake of thinking that they're committed to the truth. When they talk about telling histories, they talk about telling the stories that matter, and to them, the stories that matter are always much more subjective than things that were influential, which would be the truthful thing, which is things which were influential. And then you've got their perspective, which is like the lived experience of X, Y, and Z. There's a reason why in history you learn about what it was like to live as a peasant much more than you learn what you used to learn, which was, for instance, the history of the aristocracy. I know virtually nothing about the monarchs of Britain, but I know a lot about what it was like to be a Tudor servant girl. That's just the nature of our education system at the moment. And also just generally what's pushed. Okay. Civic Nationalist says, how does my 5-year-old 500cc motorbike pollute more than a brand new car? I'm paying £70 a year, yet a new car pays £20. Is there a tax on new vehicles?
Oh, no. A new car pays 20 quid in road tax a year.
Oh, right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, unlike me, who pays closer to 250.
What?
With my banger.
Is that out? Lord above. You must really love that car. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it is sort of getting to the point where, it's more expensive to keep it than it would be to buy a new one. But, 250 quid a year compared to, paying, I don't like owing money to people or companies or anything like that. So I'd have to buy a new car outright. Paying like $6,000 for a car or something like that. It's cheaper to pay 250 quid a year for the tax.
Yeah. When it comes to the motorbike, I assume motorbikes are taxed more heavily just because you can fit less people in them theoretically, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a single owner of a car and you're never going to have any passengers in it. Just because you could have 4 or 5 people in it, you pay less road tax. Kind of weird. But, in the same way that people were like, oh, buses are so economical. Not when they're empty.
No, the tax thing is to do with emissions and such. And that's why why new cars are 20 quid, because the emissions are a lot less.
But he's saying his motorbike is less than 5 years old.
Yeah, what did he say? How much did he say he was paying for it?
70.
70. Well, it's not a car though, so.
Yeah, but it can't be emitting more pollutants really than the car, especially if it's that young.
Trollop7 says no tax on vehicles over 25. That's not true anymore. That got changed.
Oh man, I was waiting for it to become a classic car, so I didn't have to pay tax on it anymore.
It's vehicles made before 1981 that are exempt. They changed it. The 25-year limit is long gone. It's now 1981. So
a friend of mine,
rubbish.
A friend of mine does have a an armored car, and because it's
Nice.
a military vehicle, he doesn't have to pay road tax on it. But it does do about 3 miles to the gallon.
Is it a ferret?
I don't know actually the exact model, but he rents it out for people who want to go to prom. They can turn up in effectively an armored car. He doesn't have a gun on top, but he's put a black pipe in there so it looks like it's got the gun on it. So it's quite funny. There you go. Jedi Knight Anakin Cringewalker says 19th instead of the 13th. Back of the bus every time. Sad face. I don't know what the. I mean, I know he's talking about Juneteenth here, but like, what's the relevance of the 13th?
Yeah, this. I'm not sure what that is. You might have to elaborate there. Jedi Knight Anakin Cringewalker, which is a great name, but.
And finally, Matchstick says Juneteenth being in Pride Month is Chef's Kiss. Also, not like they can celebrate Father's Day. Brutal.
No, the whole Pride Month, Juneteenth thing is very. Have you seen all the buck breaking memes?
What is buck breaking?
Oh my! It's like Tariq Nasheed, and like all those like very out there, almost self-parody level race grifters. He brought out a movie called Buck Breaking that was basically about it was like an anti-gay thing and
Right.
saying that homosexuality was used to essentially break the will of slaves, and that's why the black community shouldn't support all this homosexual propaganda. But it's really really shoddily produced and still has like the Google Images thing on some of the images he uses. It's really weirdly cut together. But he made this really cringy documentary called Buck Breaking about how homosexuality was used to basically rule over slaves, and it just got mocked to hell and back because it was so shit and weird.
I see. Oh, Anakin Cringewalker has corrected us about it. Says 13th is first, 19th is the back of the numbers ending in teenth. Oy vey bongs.
That was a bit esoteric. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure how we're supposed to glean that.
Yeah, that was a bit too deep for us. You're obviously his IQ is obviously.
No,
Yes.
don't stoke his
19.
ego. Don't stoke.
He obviously watches Rick and Morty.
Well, I wasn't stroking his ego. I was being sarcastic.
You tailed sarcastic, surely not. But yes, speaking by the way of Father's Day, did you guys do anything nice for your parents on Father's Day?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
I went to see him, but I would have gone to have seen him I go and see him every Sunday. So
No, didn't even like. Do you not celebrate Father's Day? Is this just not something?
I was gonna say I don't celebrate Father's Day because actually my dad's dead. So
That's a bit awkward. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good reason. Mine is just that he doesn't care. So
I'm not sure he'd eat the chocolates if I got them for him. I'd be very surprised if he did. That might freak me out a bit.
I'd be quite impressed.
No,
No, I don't care about Father's Day because he doesn't. So
Fair enough.
I mean, he doesn't even remember his birthday. Never mind Father's Day.
Well, now I just feel like alone in a corner, the one person who celebrates Father's Day. My dad would be very sad if I didn't get him at least a card. So
I feel like very Batman. Like my parents are dead.
It's like, but did they scar you before they left?
No, thankfully.
Thankfully. Yeah. Well, although we know where your love of traps comes from.
Anakin
Cringewalker says Harry Ann forgot to visit, didn't he?
Yeah.
Are you Harry Ann's father?
Apparently, yeah. It's become this meme has just grown arms and legs. This one,
but he's Welsh, sort of.
he's not even Welsh. That's
Is he
the thing.
Manchester.
Not even Welsh. Wow.
Not even Welsh. Yeah, Manchester-ish.
Ugh.
You make it sound like he's like sub-Welsh. Like it would have been better if he's Welsh. He's somehow below Welshman.
We should do a top trumps of like different regional dialects at some point, so that we can have a direct comparison, so we know who the people who are just on the lowest tier just by standard definitions.
Oof. I don't know. There's some pretty esoteric, terrible accents out there.
Stop! You've used the word esoteric twice. I mean, that's going to drop you a couple of points there, Scrum.
What, there is some real granular accents out there. Hey, two things can be esoteric, okay?
Yes, I know. At least I know what esoteric means, unlike tail feature here, for instance.
Excuse me. I'll have you know.
Furiously googling in the background, he is.
No, I'm sitting playing my guitar, so I can't be keyboarding things at the moment.
Okay, as someone who lives relatively close to Manchester, I will say Mancunian is intolerable. Even though like the Mancunians hate the Scousers, like Mancunians sound like vaguely Scouse, but not quite. Sometimes depends on what they're saying, but it's pretty close. Either that or like people from Blackpool don't sound very good either.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say the Liverpudlian accent is definitely the worst for me.
It's too easy though, you know.
Do you know what? I would call Liverpudlian like akin to me like licorice. I hate licorice. And I just end it there. I'm just like, I hate Liverpudlian people. Right. No, but if you get a woman who's got a very, very light Liverpudlian accent, you know, I can tolerate and enjoy, you know, just a hint of licorice, sort of style aniseedy type flavour with my food, and in the same way that, you know, a very light Liverpudlian accent might be cute, but the rest of it, no.
I've been told
Messi loves Stella Black.
Oh, I'd take that on a blind date. No.
There's apparently like different types of Scouse accent. I've been told by Scousers. I can't detect this because my ear isn't trained enough. But I've been told that someone who I thought was a Scouser was quote unquote not a real Scouser because they're from the Wirral. I don't know what that definition. They sound quote unquote a bit posh, which is I don't understand that distinction. But apparently there is some argument about who and who isn't a proper Scouser.
I got called Danish the other day, or at the very least not English, which I find quite surprising given my accent. But also I don't sound like either of my parents because I learned correct elocution as a child.
Yeah, I people think I'm Canadian for some reason because I don't speak like Peter Kay.
Nobody wants to speak like Peter Kay.
Peter Kay wants to speak like that.
Peter Kay is quite possibly the worst comedian this country has ever produced.
Oh, I love Peter Kay because his accent. Really, that's about it. If it wasn't for his accent, I wouldn't find him funny at all.
But he just recycles jokes which you would tell your mates down the pub. Like
the thing is, it's even worse for me because I am actually from Bolton. Not to completely dox myself, but people know that anyway. You know, I can actually switch to it a bit if you want me to. I can actually talk like people talk round here, and it sounds like I'm doing a parody, but it's not. It's like you'll talk to people on the street and they just sound like they're in a bad northern accent, but no, that's just how people talk round here.
But no,
it's very reet broad. It very much is. It's not even like a Yorkshire accent. It's not even like "ee me duck." It's very, very harsh and very kind of almost. I don't know. It's very broad, as we would say. That's a bit disturbing, isn't it? Because that's how a lot of people, like, you know, I can just switch to doing that, and that's not quite right. But yeah, I can very easily just be quite northern, and that's that. I don't know. It's a bit weird.
just please be yourself, Scrump, and anything but that.
Well, that's how people talk around here, and everyone's surprised when I don't talk like that. They keep asking me where I'm from, and I'm like, yeah, I'm actually from here.
Oh no! People are asking if Peter Kay is worse than Nish Kumar, in my opinion. And
well, at least Peter Kay was never woke, really. I mean, okay, he was proper normie humour, but it was pretty harmless stuff. But Nish Kumar is, you know, of the new generation of.
It's still like I wouldn't call. The trouble is, I wouldn't call Nish Kumar a comedian.
All right. Oh, okay. Well,
like Peter Kay will try and do his stupid like Like every time anyone mentions Peter Kay, I imagine his flabby, obese ass standing on a stage talking about Amy Winehouse's. I think it's Amy Winehouse, or is it Duffy or someone? Anyway, like Mercy. Mercy is the song.
That was Duffy.
Duffy, yeah, and he's talking about how I thought it was begging me for birdseed. That was the thing.
Yeah.
And it's that clip, and it drives me mad every time because it's just not funny, and he's going mental, and there's like a load of idiots, and the audience isn't really laughing, and you can tell that they've inserted a bit of a laugh track on the live commentary and all sorts. But yeah, so he's at least making jokes, whereas Nish Kumar just makes jabs.
I'm going to say disregard Peter Kay. Big up Fred Dibner. We actually have a statue of Fred Dibner here.
Actual mad lad
Dibner.
on
Dibner.
get Ken Dankula to do a mad lad on Fred Dibner, who had a mine and a pit in his garden.
Yeah, I've
Amazing.
actually I went there.
I want to go. It's on my list of places to go.
I have been there. But, I've got. People don't believe me. They have to take pictures of it. But yes, there is a Fred Dibner statue in Bolton Town Centre.
Yes, that's the only reason I would go to Bolton.
It's
There's a lot of that.
Nish Kumar, you'll notice, doesn't take the piss out of himself, and he doesn't take the piss out, and he makes barbed statements, and he'll try and rope everyone in. He's a propaganda artist. He's not a comedian, and he's just not funny. So there you go.
Well, nobody's really.
But so there you go. Peter Kay ranks higher than Nish Kumar just because Nish Kumar is a worse comedian. He may be trying, but he's not.
Are there any good comedians left?
Yes, I was thinking it's just.
See, it's difficult,
so
right?
Fucking dead now.
Because you'll recall, because you went there as well, didn't you, Tailed? You and I went to a couple of comedy gigs in London.
Comedy Unleashed.
Comedy Unleashed. And the trouble is that it goes the other way. Like, there are some people who think that because comedy is a fine line, right? So there are people who are making all the same jokes as well, just on the opposite side.
Yes.
And that's not comedy in my view either. It's very difficult to actually find genuinely funny people. But yeah, like I mean, they still exist, but they rarely perform. That's the thing. I look for people who are funny.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just feels like everything's been done comedy wise.
I mean,
I'm sure. It's kind of like.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not to say that there aren't people who aren't, that there aren't people out there who are good at jokes and all that kind of thing. But to me, whenever I see somebody, and even if they're, on our side, say, or they're edgy or whatever, I usually just go, heard George Carlin make that joke or some variant of it. It just feels like everything's been done.
I mean, there is some stuff which. There's occasional gems in there, but I find it very difficult, to do it. Some part of me wonders whether or not I've just become too cynical for comedy as well, or that I just, because I spend my time like thinking about current events, and a lot of comedy touches on current events. It's very rare that you'll have someone who says something which is funny because you know a little bit about it, but not that much, and I'm not trying to say that I know everything about politics and therefore it can't be funny. I'm saying that it's easy to pick holes, right? And if you're looking for holes, then it becomes not comedy, right? You're supposed to relax and just laugh, right?
The problem with comedy now is that a lot of our shared culture just doesn't exist anymore. People are very atomized and live in their own bubbles. So there isn't as much like shared experience to skewer, so comedy can't be quite as broad.
Well,
the only comedy I've really enjoyed in the past few years has been incredibly specific stuff, like Sam Hyde and World Peace.
Well, this is also like where memes have kind of replaced things as well, because they can react so much faster. I'd say the last recent kind of jump up. Comedy moved from stand-up to panel shows, and now panel shows are kind of tapped out. And then you've also got people who would have gone into comedy now make memes, essentially, and try and generate them. But
yeah, I mean, meme humor is definitely sort of on the ascendant, really, or at least in terms of it's got the most reach, I would say. I think more people watch, viral memes and videos
Yeah.
and such than watch any quote unquote comedy programs. Like all these late night with whoever, James Corden or Neil Oliver or whatever the fuck.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of stand-up, for instance, used to be ripping into the audience, especially the people at the front rows who paid to be there because they knew they would also be, potentially targeted, and that's just not a thing anymore because you're not allowed to really do that, or if you do, it's so tame, or it's a bit into a relatable bit of comedy. Michael McIntyre isn't shredding people. He might ask what you do, and then he goes, "Oh, I'm a bit like that," and then go into a story about his kid or whatever.
I've been to see Darragh O'Brien a few times, and I ended up with a front row ticket.
Oh, right.
I didn't actually really mean to. I just went whatever the first ticket available was, but the ticket's obviously just gone on sale. And what I usually do, I like meeting people, and so I kind of hung around to meet Darragh before the show. And his tour manager was there. I think I recognised him from seeing him before, and he did as well. And he came over and he's like, "All right, what row are you in?" I said, "Oh, I'm in the front row." He went, "You better have some damn good stories." Because he says basically the first half hour of the show is him going through everybody in the front row and just ripping the piss out of them, or trying to get some banter out of you at the very least. And it was really annoying because I was at the very, very end of the front row, and he went through everybody very systematically, and then he got to the person next to me and did a wee bit, and then he just went on to something else. So I was raging. I was like, "Man, I've got some good stories."
He took one look at the top of your head and was blinded, and so just needed to
I wasn't
move to the
bald
other
at the
side.
time. you prick. I had a full head of luscious black curly hair that went halfway down my back. Not even ginger, no.
Not even ginger.
And also, I think chances are he would have looked at me and went, "Kindred spirits," even if I was bald.
maybe it would have created a kind of.
I was the only one in the front row that he didn't actually ask anything, and I was quite upset.
Destroyed.
Amazing.
Yeah, I did. I brought it up with him at the end because I hung about at the end as well and got an autograph and stuff.
Oh.
He used to collect autographs, and I was like, "You didn't ask me," and I was in the front row, and he was like, "All right, tell me now."
I think I went to a gig when I was 19, 18, and there was this poor, bless him, Canadian actor turned comedian who was trying to do a set, and nobody. It was such a quiet night, and nobody had sat in the front row seats, and he's going, "This is the part of the show where I would normally, talk to some people in the front row, but I can't do that." And he literally had to improvise for about 20 minutes because he just had nothing to say outside. If nobody was there for him to talk to, it was brutal.
That's always painful when you see someone who's obviously having to just wing it because things have gone a bit sideways.
Yeah, and then but after about that 20 minutes, I think I was too drunk to really follow what else was going on. But there were some people who were quite good there. So I mean, to be fair, a lot of I don't mean to say that comedy might come back, but it's not like we've got open mic nights going on right now, right? So
no. Well, there is one thing I'd like to say about comedians. One of the gigs that we went to at Comedy Unleashed, I can't remember what her name was, but it was actually a female comedian, and she was actually pretty funny. I don't know if you remember.
Was she the comedian, or was she the au pair?
Well, she was the compere, but
The
she
compere,
was yeah, she is a comedian, and she basically just ripped into everybody in the audience.
She was hilarious, and
she was pretty good.
Did you come drinking with us afterwards? I can't remember. No, I think you went home quite early, didn't you?
I think I did. I think we had to get the train home.
You had
the next
to,
day.
yeah. Whereas me, Marcus, Carl, and some others all went up to the B&B that was there. It was like a big. I think they'd rented the area, so there was like it was a suite, so there was kitchen and bedrooms and so on, like a flat, and she was there, and she gave everyone in the flat an N-word pass. It was hilarious.
Yeah, she was pretty good. I think that was the night I had to get the sleeper train home because I was working the next morning.
Oh,
So that was interesting. But yeah, I sat in the front row of a comedy gig wearing a kilt, manspreading as much as I could, and then had to say to like Andrew Doyle or whoever it was, is there any chance you could remove me from the footage because my face is on it?
yeah, you were.
Not that I really care anymore, but and obviously the compere woman, she just ripped into me because I was sitting right at the front with my legs wide apart and everything with a kilt on.
Yeah.
And Andrew Doyle was raging at me. He was like, "Why the hell? If you didn't want to be on the video and stuff like that, why the hell did you sit at the front with a kilt on? You stupid idiot!"
And then and that was the same night I was sitting next to Rose. And,
Yes.
and we had to make it very clear that we were neither related nor dating, and the compare was like, "Oh, is she not good enough for you, mate?" Or whatever. It was just so funny. That was quite funny.
Nice. Yeah, that was a good night though. All the same.
Yeah, it was a pleasant time.
I'm now reminded of just like heckling Sargon.
I think
his event.
I think Tom Harwood was there as well before he went kind of uber woke.
I don't even know who that is.
The
I've
chap,
seen him,
he works
I've seen him
for
on Twitter.
Guido Fawkes. He works for. But he
Oh,
was,
right. Okay.
and he was on BBC and ITV quite a lot, talking about, when is he going to get his hair cut, and that sort of thing. They like him on because he's pretty. That's pretty much it.
Oh, right.
Oh, okay.
I do remember it must have been one of the UKIP nights, but Marcus was doing one of his stand-up things, and about half an hour before he was due to go on, he went, "Man, I'm still needing about 10 minutes of material."
Oh no.
So I'm just sat in the hotel room, just like writing stuff and just bouncing ideas off each other.
I think that was the night I told the BBC that we were there to support Marcus and we would laugh regardless of whether or not he was funny or not.
Oh yeah. That was an interesting weekend because obviously I was with Marcus the whole time that the crew were there, and I said right at the beginning, yes, I don't want to be in this film, and they went, "Well, could you fuck off?"
Yeah.
In the way, it's a pattern here that you seem to place yourself on camera and then insist you don't want to be on camera.
I just like to annoy people. What can I say? But also, yeah, I was there. Me and Marcus were kind of just wandering through London and everything, and these guys were filming us. And then he was like, "You're in shot again. Go and take a step to the side." But Marcus was just kind of wandering about on his own then, with a film crew, with me sort of behind the film crew. It was totally surreal.
Very
That does sound a bit weird.
Yeah, it was one of the weirder times I've been in London anyway. One might say it was even esoteric.
Oh,
That's not how that works.
I know it doesn't, but I
God's
wanted to
sake.
talk about that before the stream ended.
Speaking of
dear.
which,
Do you
I
look at that segue?
we're
I did that.
gonna bring things to a close for now.
Oh my, look at the time.
Harry Ann Gladive says hi, Da. By the way, to
All
you
right,
there,
son.
Toad.
I wasn't flagging you off early, honest.
Totally was. It's been a pleasure, chaps. The just a reminder, this stream wouldn't be here without your guys' support, and thank you ever so much for coming by, everybody. So just to say, I will be giving away a copy of Civilization 6 Platinum Edition. All you need to do to be eligible to be selected as the winner for that is just like the stream and leave a comment once we're finished. That'd be great. Preferably mention that you probably want the game, Otherwise, things will be, I don't want to give the game to someone who's not going to play it or isn't interested in having it. So, Civilization 6 Platinum Edition. Hopefully, the British show will be joining us again next week. I will also be able to prepare a decent number of topics, both political and non-political. I will also be arranging several streams this week, hopefully. I know there's a couple of things I want to go through with Aiden Paladin, and I want to take advantage and get back on your screen so that I'm back to relevance and I'm here. It's a pleasure bringing the stream to you as always. Thank you so much everyone for watching, and thank you to my guests. Thank you to Scrump Monkey.
Hello, yes, and goodbye.
Thank you very much to Tailed Feature for joining us.
Thank you, bye.
And with that, take care everyone and have a great week. Bye bye.
Cheerio and rasta.